The silence inside the palace walls is no longer sounding protective, it is sounding panicked. Because after years of whispers, suspicious timelines, strange public appearances, and internet theories dismissed as crazy gossip, something explosive just happened behind royal doors. A palace insider has now reportedly spoken openly about the Meghan Markle surrogacy controversy, and suddenly the conversation that was once hidden in dark corners of the internet is exploding into the mainstream with terrifying speed. And what is sending shockwaves through royal circles is not just the allegation itself, but the growing fear that Buckingham Palace may no longer be able to keep this lid closed. For years, people were mocked for asking questions. They were called conspiracy theorists, trolls, obsessed royal haters. But now, those same questions are suddenly being repeated by people dangerously close to the institution itself. According to reports now circulating through major royal commentary spaces, a high-level palace courtier allegedly admitted that the cloak and dagger secrecy surrounding Archie and Lilibet's births has created a constitutional crisis that refuses to disappear. And those words, cloak and dagger secrecy, changed everything. Because palace insiders do not casually use language like that unless pressure behind the scenes has already reached a boiling point. What makes this even more explosive is the timing. Why now? Why, after years of silence, is this story suddenly erupting again with fresh momentum? Some royal watchers believe it is because internal panic is growing over succession legitimacy questions becoming impossible to suppress. Others think somebody inside the institution may finally be trying to force a confrontation before the situation becomes even more damaging. And once you start connecting the dots, the entire situation begins to look far darker than anyone expected. Lady Colin Campbell's name keeps surfacing in the center of this storm, and that alone is making people nervous. Because unlike anonymous online gossip accounts, Lady C is somebody with decades of experience around royal reporting, legal battles, and insider networks. She claims she initially dismissed the rumors herself. She openly admitted she thought the entire thing sounded insane at first. But then, according to her own account, she started asking questions privately, and what she discovered allegedly disturbed her enough to continue investigating publicly despite massive backlash. And this is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable for the monarchy itself. The issue is no longer just Meghan Markle. It is now about constitutional accountability. Because under historic royal tradition, births involving people in the line of succession were never treated like ordinary celebrity pregnancies. They were matters of national verification. Witnessed, documented, officially confirmed. The monarchy learned centuries ago that uncertainty surrounding royal heirs can destabilize an entire institution. That history matters now more than ever. And then comes the detail that refuses to stop haunting people. Prince Harry himself wrote in Spare that he and Meghan were back at Frogmore Cottage only 2 hours after Archie's birth. 2 hours. That line sat quietly in the memoir for a while until royal commentators began zooming in on it with growing disbelief. Because even people with zero medical knowledge immediately started asking the same question. How could a first-time royal mother allegedly leave so quickly after giving birth under what should have been one of the most medically monitored situations imaginable? Now, to be fair, there are rare circumstances where unusually quick discharge timelines can happen. But what intensified the suspicion was not just the timeline itself. It was Harry's apparent casualness about it. He highlighted it proudly, almost as if it were some charming little detail nobody would question. But the more people repeated it out loud, the stranger it sounded. And suddenly, that tiny sentence in Spare became one of the most discussed details in the entire controversy. Meanwhile, the internet never stopped obsessing over Meghan's baby bump appearances. Videos circulated endlessly. The changing shapes, the movements, the positions, the moments where the bump allegedly appeared to shift unnaturally during public appearances. Some people dismissed it as lighting, clothing, posture, or internet exaggeration. Others became convinced something was deeply wrong. But the real issue was not just the visuals themselves. It was Meghan's theatrical presentation style surrounding the pregnancies. Critics argued she constantly drew attention to the bump in ways that only intensified public scrutiny instead of calming it. And then came Samantha Markle adding gasoline to the fire. Meghan's estranged half-sister publicly raised doubts surrounding Archie's birth. And while many people instinctively dismissed her because of the toxic family feud, others pointed out something important. The rumors already existed long before Samantha Samantha spoke. She did not invent the controversy. She simply amplified a conversation that had already been building quietly for years. But perhaps the most chilling part of this entire saga is what allegedly happened to Lady Colin Campbell herself. According to her account, somebody created a fake GoFundMe using her identity in what she believes was an effort to destroy her credibility right as she became one of the loudest voices questioning the pregnancies. And if true, that changes the atmosphere completely, because people do not allegedly launch reputation attacks against someone unless they view them as dangerous. Now think about the bigger picture here. Years have passed. Questions keep growing. Yet no formal documentation has ever been publicly clarified in the way royal births traditionally were. No lawsuits have aggressively crushed the allegations despite Harry and Meghan being notoriously litigious in other situations. No definitive institutional explanation has shut the entire thing down once and for all. Instead, silence. Thick, uncomfortable silence. And sometimes silence inside royal circles says more than words ever could. What is terrifying palace observers right now is not just the allegation itself, it is the pattern. The pattern is what keeps dragging this story back from the dead, no matter how aggressively people try to bury it. Every single time the controversy starts fading, another strange detail resurfaces. Another old clip goes viral. Another constitutional expert raises concerns. Another palace source allegedly whispers something behind closed doors. And suddenly the entire fire reignites again, stronger than before. That is why insiders are reportedly becoming nervous, because this no longer behaves like ordinary celebrity gossip. Ordinary gossip burns out. This story keeps mutating, evolving, growing teeth. The palace silence is now being interpreted in two completely different ways, and both possibilities are dangerous. One side argues Buckingham Palace simply refuses to respond because it never comments on private medical matters involving royal family members. That is the traditional never complain, never explain strategy. But critics are increasingly saying this situation is fundamentally different because succession legitimacy is not just a private issue. It is constitutional territory. And once a constitutional question enters the room, silence begins to look less like dignity and more like avoidance. That is exactly why Lady Colin Campbell keeps hammering the same demand over and over again. Provide the documentation, not tabloid leaks, not emotional interviews, not Netflix narratives. Official verification through the same institutional channels used for other royal births. She insists the request itself is incredibly simple. And according to her argument, if Meghan and Harry truly have nothing to hide, then ending the speculation should be easy. Which raises the question haunting royal commentators right now: why has it never happened? And here is where the pressure becomes explosive for King Charles himself. Because if the monarchy ignores the controversy completely, critics will accuse the palace of protecting uncertainty at the very center of succession legitimacy. But if the monarchy directly confronts the issue publicly, the consequences could be catastrophic. Imagine the global media frenzy if Buckingham Palace were ever forced into a formal investigation surrounding Archie and Lilibet's succession status. The headlines alone would detonate across every continent. The monarchy would instantly face accusations of cruelty, racism, institutional warfare, and family betrayal all over again. It would become one of the biggest royal scandals in modern history overnight. And maybe that is why insiders allegedly sound so tense right now, because there may no longer be a painless solution. The longer the palace stays silent, the more suspicious people become. But the moment the palace addresses the issue directly, the monarchy risks unleashing chaos it may not be able to contain. It becomes a trap either way. And some royal watchers believe Prince William is paying extremely close attention to how this situation develops, because future kings do not like unresolved constitutional shadows hanging over the institution they are destined to inherit. What makes everything even stranger is how carefully Meghan and Harry have controlled information around their children since birth. Limited access, minimal visibility, extremely managed appearances, tight narrative control. Supporters said they are simply protecting their family from toxic media obsession. Critics argue the secrecy itself only deepens suspicion because historically the royal family operated very differently regarding succession transparency. And again, that word returns: secrecy. It keeps appearing everywhere in this controversy, controversy like a dark fingerprint nobody can wipe away. Some observers are now openly asking why no major legal offensive has ever fully crushed these allegations. Harry and Meghan have aggressively pursued lawsuits before. They have fought newspapers, paparazzi agencies, private letter publications, and media organizations. They clearly are not afraid of litigation. So why has someone like Lady Colin Campbell, who repeatedly raises these claims publicly and directly, seemingly avoided the legal destruction many expected? That question keeps echoing louder every month, and now the internet senses weakness. That is the dangerous part. The moment online audiences detect that institutions appear nervous or defensive, the speculation multiplies uncontrollably. Every old clip gets reanalyzed. Every timeline gets dissected. Every public appearance becomes evidence in somebody's theory. And suddenly, Buckingham Palace finds itself battling something modern monarchies struggle to control: decentralized suspicion spreading globally in real time. But maybe the most unsettling detail of all is this: despite all the outrage, all the headlines, all the emotional warfare surrounding Harry and Meghan over the years, this particular controversy simply refuses to disappear. It survives every distraction, every PR campaign, every new royal scandal. It always comes back, stronger, louder, more mainstream than before. And palace insiders reportedly understand something terrifying now. Once constitutional doubt enters public consciousness, removing it becomes almost impossible. So now the monarchy faces an impossible question. Will King Charles eventually be forced to intervene publicly to protect institutional credibility? Will Prince William quietly push for internal clarity before inheriting the throne? Or will Buckingham Palace continue betting that silence alone can outlast the storm? Because according to the courtier quoted in the growing reports surrounding this scandal, this story is not dying quietly anymore. The pressure is building. The whispers are becoming mainstream conversation. And somewhere behind palace walls, people may already know that the clock is ticking.